Hi guys, welcome to the explanation for PT36 Game 3. This is a tricky combination game. I think without scenarios, you're going to have a really hard time doing it. I'm talking even like a 170 plus test taker might find themselves spending 13, 14, 15 minutes on this game if they don't do scenarios. So I'm not going to hide the ball here. We're only going to do the scenario approach. I'll talk about making that decision. So what is this game exactly? It's basically a combination of an in and out game with ordering, and specifically it's vertical ordering. So you divide things into this window and aisle groups, right? These are like your two groups, and then within that we've got to order from front to back, 1, 2, 3. So people are sitting on the left side of the bus. There's the first row, the second row, the third row. We're going to be ordering along that y-axis, and then you're doing grouping here between the window and the aisle. Other than that, it's pretty simple, right? You only have these 6 people. Each one is going in one seat. No problems there. So our 6 people are G, H, I, K, L, and M. Those are the pieces we're going to be popping into these spots. Okay, for a rule here, we get a big one right off the bat for our first rule. Hoffman's in an aisle seat immediately behind Gutierrez. So if I'm drawing that outside the board, I draw GH, right, like this, and it's an aisle. But I see that, and I'm like, okay, well, I'd really like to just pop that right in here. There's only 2 places it could be. So already I'm kind of thinking in a scenario fashion, right? I got GH right here, or the other possibility is that I could have G and H. That's it. That's all you can do. And that's going to only leave 4 other spots on the board. So I want to get both of those written out. Then the next rules are really complicated, little kind of nitpicky conditional rules. So I get them down, but there's no real way to join them up or anything. So let's write these down real quick. Okay, if Moore is in an aisle seat, then Hoffman's in the same row as Lapis, and you could actually know right away that that's going to be LH, right? Because H is always in the aisle anyways. Then if G's in the same row as Kelly, again, same situation. So if you see KG, because you know G is going to be in the aisle, then you're going to see Moore right behind Ida Mura. And then that is going to be necessarily in the window, right? Because you could never fit that over in the aisle. So we're already kind of making some little inferences here. One more rule, if K's in a window, then Moore's in row 3. And then if K is in 3, then I is in row 1. So looking at the game here, I've got all these rules, and they're really complicated little rules. Well, they're not complicated, but they're really specific, and they don't line up with each other very well. You can't like combine them as we would in a typical in-out game. So I take a peek at this. I've only got these 4 spots left, and I'm thinking, okay, well, why don't we just divide this into scenarios based on who's in the aisle seat, right? There's only going to be 4 combinations where we could have like I in the aisle, and we try it with both the orderings of the GH block, then do the same thing with K, the same thing with L, and the same thing with M. That's going to end up being 8 total scenarios. Not all of them are necessarily possible. And from kind of a theoretical standpoint, the reason why that idea looks so good is I try that, and then there's all these other rules that sort of dictate where things can go in these remaining spots. So it's going to be probably pretty easy to complete those orders, right? So there's a lot of things in this game that are just basically screaming, use scenarios. Not too many spots left. This big block that's taking up a lot of room. And then the fact that you have a lot of rules to determine what's going on within these spots. So it's going to be pretty easy to end up with complete scenarios. So let's just try it for Moore first. I'll pick a random person here. Okay, we have a rule about what happens if Moore is in the aisle. That's right here. And in fact, this rule is only going to apply to this scenario, right? Anytime we put Moore somewhere else, as we're going to do in all these other scenarios, this rule doesn't apply. So Moore in an aisle, we've got L and H. And then we know K is also in a window seat here, right? So, because there's no aisle spaces left. So that means Moore has to be in row 3. So this scenario works. Moore's already in 3. But this scenario is out. It's not possible, right? K is going to be in a window. That would force M to row 3. And then it just doesn't work over here. So we can cross this scenario out right away. Also, we can't put KG here because if we did, then we need to see this IM thing, right? That's not possible. So K goes here, and then I goes here. And that scenario is finished out. Another useful thing I can do here is now this rule is never going to come into play again, so I can just get rid of it. It's out of my mind at this point. Now let's just pick another variable of the 4 we have left. Remember, we have these 4 left here. We've already taken care of M. So now we'll just look at I. And now again, K has to be in a window, only spots left, so we pop M into 3. We can't see KG because then you'd have the I and M thing, right? So then K has to be where G is not. And then the last thing to do is just pop L in. And both these scenarios are possible. No problems here. This rule doesn't get triggered, the K and 3 thing. Everything works out fine. Okay, now moving along, let's pop L into our 2 aisle seats. Again, K is in the window, so we should be noticing a pattern now that M's going to have to be in 3. And again, we can't see KG, so same pattern here. Got to have K, K, and then we put I in the remaining spot. And again, both these work out. This rule doesn't come into play. Everything's fine. And then we just move along. Now we're doing K in the aisle. And here, all of a sudden, this rule finally does come into play. Now we have to put I in 1 here. And then you don't really know what's going to happen with L and M. There's no rules that would tell us where those 2 have to go, so they can be in either spot. In here, it's even more free, right? None of these rules get triggered. Okay, K's not going to be on the same row as G, so that's out. K's not in a window in this scenario, and K's not in 3. So none of these rules come into play. So you just have I, M, and L going in whatever order they want to in these 3 spots. And that's it. It's not a fully complete scenario, but it's going to be really easy to switch these things around in your mind. And now that's it. We've done everything. Like, there's no more to do in this game. It's going to be really easy to solve the questions with these scenarios. Usually a lot of questions will focus on this group, the K and the aisle group, because there's still some ambiguity in there. Everything else is totally like set in stone. So if we have could be true questions, you can anticipate that they might deal with the K and the aisle scenarios. Okay, I'll switch to another color here so it's clear that we're just working on the questions. For 14, we can just blaze through these. What could be true here? It's super easy to just look for things in your scenarios. For example, can we have I in row 2 and Kelly in row 3? I look around, I never see I in row 2, so that's gone. Super easy to do. We won't belabor the point here. You can just flip to the right answer. K and Moore both sit in row 3. You can have that down in this scenario. So again, like I said, it's a could be true, and it ended up focusing on this scenario right here. Oh, we also see it right here. Okay, 15, we've got Lapis and Kelly both in a window seat. So it looks like that's in this scenario right here. Both these scenarios right here. This is out and these are out. So we're just looking at this stuff right here. And we got to figure out what could be true. Okay, how about Moore occupying the aisle seat in row 3? Yeah, that could be true. We see that right here in our scenario 1. So A is the answer there. Again, with scenarios, it's so easy to solve the problems that it always feels like a waste of time to explain them after you got the scenarios down. Basically, that's what scenarios do for you. They essentially, they take a lot of time to make, but then you can solve the questions just super, super fast. Which is why it's generally a good idea if you can do anything fewer than 8 scenarios. 16, what happens if Moore's in row 1? The only place we could ever see that is right here. It's literally the only place. In fact, it kind of took a moment to remember that it was possible over here. You could put Moore in row 1 here. What must be true there? I'd be looking at something on this right side that's fixed. And indeed, you run into Kelly sits in row 1. Answer choice D right there. It might be worth noting how difficult that problem would be to do without scenarios. You'd have to try more over in the window first, right? And then realize that that doesn't work out, trying to track that scenario. Then you'd have to flip them over to the other side. You could do it, but again, with our scenarios, it's just so fast to do. Okay, what happens if Kelly's in the ILC in row 3? So that's only this scenario right here. Each of the following must be true except G and I. Yeah, that must be true. Sorry, G and I. Yeah, that must be true. Hoffman in the same row as Lapis. Do they have to be in the same row? No, they don't. They could switch around, right? L and M can switch positions in this place. So that doesn't have to be true, and it's our right answer. Okay, for 18, we gotta look at what happens if neither G nor I is in the first row. So this scenario is out. Both these are out. This is out. We've got this left, and then this is out. Could be possible here, right? You could have M or L in this row. And then I somewhere else. So what could be true here? At this point, it's pretty easy. Okay, Hoffman in row 2. Nope, that's never true. It's always in 1 in both these scenarios, so A is gone. How about Kelly in row 2? Nope, we gotta have K in 1, both scenarios there. More in row 2, not possible here, but it could be possible here. You make this L up here, and then pop I down to here, and you're good. So C is the correct answer on this one. Okay, so that's the game. Pretty easy if you have your scenarios. If you don't, it's going to be a real challenge. The other big thing I want people to note here is that this was a combination game. We had grouping with these 2 groups, and then we're doing ordering within those 2 groups. So notice, for example, the key inference that we made, where we often then knew what was on this aisle side, and then we know this rule about when K is in the window is then getting triggered, right? So you're doing your grouping first, so to speak, and then making inferences from that. That's a common theme. And yeah, I got a little bit hidden here while we were doing the scenarios, but it's important to make those inferences where you know something's in a group, so you know K is in the window group. Don't know where it is yet, but that triggers a rule. You're making a grouping inference there. So it's very important to keep those mental tasks straight in your mind, and it can help you quickly fill out these scenarios. Okay, that's the game. We'll see you on the next one.